Welcome back to another episode of the 1024 podcast. It's the new year. It's a new us. We're back. We were gone for a week, but we're back. We had a little technical difficulties on our side. Our producer, we're gonna give him a couple demerits, all right, because he can't get the audio correct. But we're back. We have a very special guest with us today, Miss Tia. Miss Tia, introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. But of course, with it being the new year, all right, we want to talk about a little. Anybody got some New Year's resolutions going? Are we doing any New Year's resolutions? What about you, Tia?
I have a New Year's resolution. Just turning a new leaf. I think God has brought me 360 and kind of renewed my spirit in a way that makes me want to love myself more by watching what I put into my body. So I'm going to be very cautious moving forward. And also, this year is my year for surrenderance. I was telling my friend Brittany, I saw a video that was like, it's like a trailer for a new Christian movie, and they were talking about having a white flag, throwing up your flag. And I think that's something that I'm going to implement in my life moving forward, surrendering daily.
I hear you. Well, mine is not as deep as yours. I'm just trying to eat a little better, kind of the same way. My thing is sweets. I love to eat sweets. If it's soda, candy, anything like that, I will eat it. And Rusty always says, like, "Hey, who are the people who buys those big bag of candies?" I'm that person. It's me. I love Kit Kats. Okay, I freaking love them. And I've already done this once, so just a little. I'm gonna tell on myself a little bit. I've already done this once. I brought all my candy to the station to give to Rusty's kids like a couple months ago, and here we are again.
They're like some mini Gaddises. They ate the whole bag in one setting.
Yeah, I just love it. I just can't go without sweets, but we're gonna try to. I'm gonna try to eat a little better. I'm gonna try to lose a few pounds. I'm trying to get back to a little bit of a fighting shape. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
Rusty, you got anything?
Yeah, I think this year I want to just learn to pray better or pray more because, I was thinking, you see that big hit on the NFL the other day? That the man was he got hit and they started doing CPR on him and stuff.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
did.
And
He went
they said everyone pray for him, and I did pray for him, but I was like, God heal him, protect him, be with his family, things like that. And I just started thinking afterwards, I'd like to have a deeper prayer relationship with the Lord. I'll see something on Facebook that says pray for this person. I always try to take the time to do that.
Yeah.
But when Jesus was here with the disciples, they didn't say teach us how to heal somebody. Teach us, they said teach us how to pray.
Yeah.
And he spent the time teaching them how to pray, and that's the most important thing. He was always praying. He was always going off by himself, talking to the Lord. And I want to have that kind of relationship with God. I think that's more important than anything else I could possibly think of. For this year going forward, I would like to have a deep prayer. You ever been to like church and you have somebody, usually like an old lady, gets up there and she goes to pray and everyone's like, oh, here we go, because it's like a 10-15 minute thing.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to just have a long prayer. I just want to have a deep, meaningful prayer where I just feel like I'm really speaking.
Communion,
Yeah, and
fellowship.
sometimes I do that a little easier when I'm driving, my eyes open, of course, and just looking around at all God's creation and just praying out loud. I feel like I have an easier time to do that, but I want to get to the point where I can just wait when I wake up in the morning. I just have a deep, deep prayer where you feel the Holy Spirit. You're like,
That's what I mean by surrenderance,
Yeah.
just taking a step back and throwing that white flag up just as soon as I wake up in the morning,
Yeah.
as I make my way through the day, surrendering to myself, maybe my coffee, or putting everybody else before God, and just taking time to actually fellowship
yeah,
with God throughout all of my days. And another thing I'm trying to implement is fasting, just because it's something that we're supposed to do, and I feel led to do, but it's all the same thing, trying to grow my prayer life
yeah.
Yeah,
as well.
100%. So with you on, Tia, you have a phenomenal story that we're going to get into today. But just to kick it off, we're just going to say that our theme today is kind of about redemption, because the way the Lord worked through your life, it is a
You're
big
never
redemption
too far
story.
gone. You're
Yeah.
never too far gone.
100%. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us about growing up and stuff, and just tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I grew up in Georgia, and I had a pretty decent family, that took me to church often, and the type of family I was in, Jesus was in the forefront, um, or so I thought it was. Um, I was a pretty good kid. I cheerleaded, did music. I was really passionate about the things that I did as a kid. And likewise, I was passionate about Jesus. The only difference was that I didn't really know a whole lot of the Bible, and I I got closer to God mainly because of the relationship I have with music. My mother would always play really good music, all different types of music, but a lot of the Christian music spoke to my heart and gave me a closeness to God that the only way that I knew, you know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's that, just to speak to that. I mean, it's amazing how much music just talks to a wide variety of people. Like just worship in general. Like for me, for the same way, worship is definitely the something that I feel called more to the Lord, like during, just because I mean, I play the guitar, and I guess that might be a little bit of the reason. And I've always grown up listening to a lot of music, kind of like yourself. But it's definitely the way I feel like the Lord is moving. Like it's almost palpable. Like if you hear a good singer, like just really giving their heart out to the Lord, like it's almost like the Holy Spirit is almost palpable in the room. Like you can
yeah,
literally just feel it. Like it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Music is definitely something God created for us to enjoy. And if you actually look at music, what is music? It's just emotion. It's some kind of emotion. It's a way of evoking an emotion to someone. So your favorite singers are really good at evoking that emotion that you feel when you hear that song.
right.
And that's why really smart guitar players, I know, okay, if I play this chord, it's going to sound sad. And I'll put all these sad chords together and then I'll build it up to this big
Right.
emotional thing, And God knew all that when he created it.
Yeah,
So
sweet
it
job.
definitely works. But saying that, you say you love music, that
I do.
actually, a lot of our listeners don't know this, but that actually is something that you do as a ministry, right? You do these things called praise dancing.
Yeah, which I learned in prison.
Yeah?
Yeah,
And,
Yeah, I
and so what is
first like
praise dancing?
yeah.
praise dancing is just another way of worshiping God, and kind of giving a visual to go along with the music. And it's just another tool in the ministry to really bring people closer to God.
hmm Do you find it hard? Like, I know that a lot of churches you'll see, maybe sometimes you'll see older ladies, their hands up, and they'll put them up, and they're not ashamed, they'll worship the Lord openly, but you see a lot of guys with their hands in their pockets, or, it just depends on where you go, but a lot of churches I found that it's very hard for them to openly, for whatever reason, openly worship the Lord, just raise
It
their
is.
hands to Him.
I was like that. I was very much like that until I went to prison.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and just give you a backstory, because since we're moving in that direction, um, I had a pretty good life
hmm
until my parents kind of got separated. I know a lot of people have that problem, when they get their
But
parents
it's
get
still
divorced.
pretty deep, like trauma when it happens to people,
Yeah,
especially depending on the age.
yeah, I had trauma leading up to it before then, and here's like confession of mine. Sometimes when parents argue back and forth, I used to pray that my parents would get divorced, and I never really forgave myself for that. But as a child, you don't understand, right? You don't
Yeah.
understand a whole lot about what's going on. I was saved. I was supposed to be saved at 10, and then certain things happen.
hmm
Yeah, my parents got divorced, and I kind of started losing hope when I met somebody and had children at a really young age, right? So, um, there were many times that maybe I wasn't serving God like I was trying to be at church, or the person I was with didn't go to church.
Yeah.
And then one thing led to another, and eventually I ended up trafficking drugs.
Okay.
I know that's a long, that
So
is a
you
long
ended up getting
stretch.
involved like the drug ring, to selling drugs.
Different cartels, and so they would put a lot of stuff in my hands. I was bilingual, young,
Mm.
I was able to get into a lot of places that a lot of people weren't, and I was able to make a whole lot of money for them. So
Yeah.
they kept me around for a pretty good amount of time, and And that eventually led to my downfall because I started loving the money that
Yeah.
I was getting, spending less time with my family. Obviously, the relationships that I was in, it just was one after another, just to
Yeah.
be completely honest. Like I was trying to fill a void from not having my father and my mother around, looking
Yeah.
for love. And then when I didn't find that, I just focused on money, and
Mhm.
my kids took the back burner. So
Yeah.
by the age of 23, I had 4 kids.
Okay.
And then I had an accident happen. And when the accident happened, I got caught with a large amount of drugs.
Mhm.
They never investigated me, so I wasn't like on their radar. It was kind of shocking. I will say this now that the person that my mother was with was a cop. It
Yeah.
was an embarrassment to our family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, he was shocked because it was in his county. I was, coming through his county. And I shocked everybody because nobody around me knew
Right.
that he
Because you
was
kind of,
doing.
and we said this before. We kind of had a previous podcast with a lot of audio issues, but we said this before. You were the cartel cheerleader because you were this small town cheerleader, like
Yeah,
just goody two shoes kind of girl, and then you went this other path and started selling drugs. Now, were you
right.
just selling drugs, or were you using drugs? Or...
I ended up, one thing about it is I ended up using the drugs
hmm
to stay in the scene, right?
Yeah.
And so by the time I started using the drugs, I mean, it was a downhill slide. And
Yeah.
and of course, that all started with
Yeah.
alcoholism. And that runs heavily in my family as well. I started using alcohol first, and then boom, next thing you know, I'm, you know,
Yeah.
doing drugs and, selling drugs, but I was selling a whole lot more drugs than I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, I had an accident. I went to jail, prayed a lot. Actually, let me take that back. Right before I went to jail, this is going to be crazy. When I had my last daughter,
hmm
I remember sitting in the hospital saying that I didn't know if Jesus was the Son of God.
Yeah.
And my mother and brother were there, and I remember the shock on their face when I told them that. And I said, well, maybe he's a prophet. See, I had compromised myself by hanging out with people of other religions, of other faiths, and I had listened to them, but I had never taken the time to actually dive into my Bible.
To learn about the Lord for yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
It sounds like you have like kind of a surface relationship, like a just attachment by the
Yeah.
family you grew up in, which a
right.
lot of people do,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then they didn't develop a personal relationship.
Yeah. Kind of like churchgoers is what we've oftentimes on this podcast said. Like, I mean, people who just attend church because, like, I mean, where we live in the Bible Belt, like it's just kind
It's the
of,
right thing to do.
yeah,
Or
churches
don't
are a dime a dozen.
you
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't get the phone call, where you at Sunday, brother?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Why
you
weren't you
just
at church?
you
Yeah.
just go kind of to get everyone off your back kind of thing. So it sounds
Yeah.
like that was kind of a similar story.
Yeah, if you go, I mean, you go once a week and you try to do good the rest of the week, but if you don't, I mean, um, doing good when you're a church goer
Yeah.
looks a little bit different than when you leave everything behind
Yeah.
and take up your cross and follow Jesus, which is what we're
100%.
supposed to do, right?
100%. Yeah.
So that's kind of my backstory.
You said you ended up in prison at a young age. How old were you?
I was 23 when I
Okay.
went to prison.
How did that feel? Was that, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously scary, 23 years old and going
Because
to
that's how
prison?
old I am currently. Like
It's like
that.
Addison's going to prison.
Yeah.
What would you
That,
do? How would you feel, buddy?
yeah. That. I mean, that's. I mean,
That'd be
of course I
terrifying.
can. Yeah. I'll,
They gave me a 20-year sentence. It was split to
Mm.
serve 10 in confinement, with the possibility of good parole if I did good. And I didn't do that great, so I ended up coming out a little bit later than what I was supposed to come out.
So when was that released at? How old were you then?
Well, the first time I was like 40 something months before they released me.
Yeah.
So like 4.5, 5, I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
Right before they released me. And then I came home and I was out for just a couple of weeks.
No.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
I
no.
couldn't imagine. Like, so I get out. I've spent a few years in prison. This scary place as a 23-year-old kid, and then you get out. I would be like, I ain't doing nothing to go back to prison. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm driving the speed limit.
Yeah.
Think that, but when you're in prison, um, Well, I'll go ahead and say this. I had time to read my Bible during that time.
Yeah,
Okay. But the backsliding is real, right? And
yeah,
we're
Yeah.
called to repent. And if we don't repent
right.
and we keep going
And
and
repent means to turn away
to
from.
turn away,
So if you don't turn away from the thing you're
right,
asking for forgiveness for,
right,
you're not really repenting.
you're not
Yeah.
really repenting. So if you're not turning away, um, then you're in a bad predicament. And that's kind of what happened to me. You know, I had repented of certain things, but I was also in a place that coaches you every day that you are worthless. You're an inmate. You're
Hmm.
not going to amount to anything. You're a criminal. It's an 80% recidivism rate in Georgia, or it was then 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Does
Uh,
that mean just to get out and come back? Like,
exactly.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Returning customers.
Yeah.
Recurring.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a big deal, and I think a lot of it has to do, you know, with exactly the treatment that you get in there. So yes, I had time to read my Bible, but I was barely tipping the iceberg when I got out the first time. I had just really learned about God's grace and mercy,
Yep.
and uh, I was not implementing it in my life. I knew then the knowledge,
Mhm.
but you know, faith without works is dead. You know, you kind of have to read the Bible, but you also have to stand fast on that
Yeah,
word when
apply it
push
to your
comes to
life.
word.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I came home, I was really shocked in society. It was hard for me to even pay the cashier. I would stumble, try to give them to keep my change. Like I was
Yeah.
feeling almost as if I
Function.
could
Yeah.
not function.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started drinking again, and it was just a matter of time before I compromised myself. I got in the car with somebody, went down south to go fishing, and we were arrested for trafficking again. So
Mm.
the person had
Mm.
drugs on them. I knew that they had drugs prior to this. Not gonna say where the drugs came from. I knew where they came from. Okay, I
Yeah.
had my hand in there, but what I'm saying is I ended up going kind of unknowingly to a place that I knew I shouldn't have went, and I ended
Caught up in
back
that
up
mess.
in
Yeah.
prison.
So second prison term.
Mad, angry, and in
Yeah.
the jail cell, saying I had people who were there that were trying to speak life into me, you know, God
Yeah.
loves you this, and I was like, whoa. I'm like,
He
don't
sent you
tell
back
me.
here. He doesn't love me.
Yeah, I'm like, don't talk to me about God, you know, but it was only a matter of time before God would soften my heart.
Mm.
Yeah.
Even before I left there, as angry as I was, God is so relentless in his pursuit
Hmm.
that he was showing up for me and showing me that he still cared about me right where I was. So I kind of took that with a grain of salt. Went back through uh, prison. We have like diagnosis. This is the most horrible
Yeah.
experience. You know, there's a lot of violence. You know, people will rob. You know, it's a literal fight for your life.
So it's not like safe. Like you think there's guards everywhere and everything would probably be safe.
I don't know. The last thing, and here's something funny. And it's kind of a running joke in there is that if the last thing you want to hear the guards say is "let them fight," but that's what they say.
No.
Let them fight.
So it just
Jeez.
happens like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it just, you know, and so I'm going back to this place where it's filled with violence, it's filled with darkness, and this is a level 5 prison, which means it's maximum
So
security.
it's pretty bad.
Right, and most of those people are lifers.
So murderers have nothing to live for. They don't care.
Right, and
They're just trying to play the game in there and
Yeah.
yes,
get out. Or I guess they're not getting out.
So,
right.
Play the game in
so
there.
oh, go ahead.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's just people didn't care because they're in there forever.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. When you went back the second time, was there, you said you got out for, just good behavior or 40 months after for the first sentence. So when you went back, did they tack on even more um, time on,
Was it
or
like
were
we
you
told
just,
you not to come back here, now you're back, so here's
yeah,
double
were you
punishment?
looking at even like more? So like really is the reason I'm asking this question is like, what did that make you feel like when you went back? Did you think that you were never getting out again, or did you just
You're
resign
like
yourself to
you're like
this
I
was
had a
my
chance and this is it and I
Yeah,
blew it and I'm
you really
back.
don't know. I mean, and there it's a guessing game where if you focus on that, then it'll just kill you, you know. But my roommate was a serial killer. She was there,
Mm.
and she was never getting home. And she had the possibility of parole, many, many, many moons ago, right?
Yeah.
So I had to humble myself and know that my time was not like their time
Yeah.
because this was their current life. And I
Yeah.
remember on the walk because we could take up like vocational
Yeah.
school there. And I remember there was a place we would call the walk. You know, it's like you have a compound and then you have little streets in your compound.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a sidewalk that we would call the walk where a lot of people would kind of hang out in the morning, you know,
Mhm.
chit chat with their coffee. And there was one lady who had been there 30 years, which is in Georgia is a full life sentence. And I remember that she was saying she was coming up for parole, but she wasn't happy about it. She didn't want to go home. And
Oh
I
man.
knew because of the time that I had did before and how hard it was for me to reenter society that I knew the pain that she felt. So I really
She
tried
didn't
to
want to
keep
leave?
quiet. No,
Why? Is it because you get food, you get fed, and you're safe, or not safe, but you have somewhere to
because what do
sleep?
you do? What do you do after 30 years of not being
Yeah.
in the free world when all you know is the prison life? And that's essentially what it is. And that's why a lot of people, why the recidivism rate is so high.
Yeah.
You know, you're there with people who you think are just like you know,
Yeah.
there you fit in. Um,
You got other people that understand you, like they're probably the black sheep of their family too, or the lowest of
yeah, you
low,
think you're
feeling,
all convicts and you'll have something in common,
yeah.
as opposed to going home where people don't understand you.
Like,
And
oh, you
Yeah.
did 10 years in prison? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
so,
crazy.
but I ended up coming out of there, um, and I thought I was going to do well.
Yeah.
And then about 3 weeks after I came home, um, there was an incident, and I was already messing up. I had already started drinking and had compromised myself doing drugs again,
Yeah.
going around the wrong people. But there was an incident where somebody robbed me and the person who was with me, and they were shot. And I went back to prison for guns.
Oh man.
And
A third time.
a third time violated my parole by just being around
Hmm.
guns, period. And on that third round, God put a warden there that kind of that I could relate to.
Yeah.
But we crossed paths, and she really kind of guided me to get my head back in the game.
Yeah.
Where the warden prior, I had a lot of wardens, but Warden Benton, I think he's currently over Alta State Prison, which is the biggest prison
Yeah.
in Georgia,
Yeah.
especially for women. But he was Christian and he tried everything to
Yeah.
keep me straight. And this lady did too. And you know, she was able to reach me because she kind of had goals that
Yeah.
I wanted in
Yeah.
life, you know.
Something about her just
She was
related to her. Yeah.
yeah, she
Yeah.
was tough and she was um, a master in her craft, let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I admired that.
Yeah.
And she asked me, I did art for them,
Yeah.
for the prison. And one day she said, you know, you have real talent. You know, you could go out and make so much money with this art. I said, I don't like art. You know,
Yeah.
I'm good
Yeah.
at it. Like, I'm glad God let me do that, but I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. And she was like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know. She's like, well, you can't stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, so you need to figure it out. And she kind of invested in me. I said, well, I kind of want to go in finance. And
Yeah.
she was like, well, you can do it. And basically, I'll help you get the books so that you can start studying it now.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So she really just took you under her wing and kind of guided you. So she was like probably one of the first real Christian women that you saw in there that were living out the way the stuff you were reading, they were living it out,
right.
Yeah.
doing the works along with
And it's amazing that, and a lot of people's story that we hear, like, it's amazing how God puts you in a position and people in your life exactly when you need it, exactly when He knows that you're going to be just, like you said, just softening your heart just enough to where, like you said, like, though people had tried before, God put this lady in your life because He
it
knew
just
exactly
worked. Yeah.
like that. He knew, man, I'm going to get Tia like this. Like, this is how she's going to listen. And to me, it's just amazing always to hear that. And, like, because and two, like I'm sure you're about to talk about, like it's amazing how in almost every person's life you have something that before you come and truly walk with the Lord, you have something that you're like almost like a whole of puzzle pieces. How we usually describe it as is like you're trying to put everything like you said, alcohol, drugs, like you're just trying to put this puzzle piece that didn't really have the
Correct.
correct thing that was going to be able to fill you. But when you finally found the Lord and put that in there, that's the only thing that's going to be able to.
Finally refilled.
Yeah.
I still didn't get it right. I came home with a pretty good to-do list
Yeah.
where I was like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm really gonna stick to my guns about this.
Yeah.
But I was really stepping out on my own strength, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And that is my major problem still to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to take control, I want to
Mm.
take charge of my life, put my best foot forward. But and I kind of did. I came home, enrolled in school, started going to college. I'm still currently trying to finish college.
Yeah.
Uh, but I backslid for a time,
Yeah.
and I felt myself really, really sinking like a sinking ship. And I met Cody, which my
Yeah.
husband, and he, he cared enough about me, kind of not to
Hmm.
want to see me do wrong, and
Yeah.
I cared enough about him not to want to see him do wrong as well. And that changed the course of our life, because while I was with him, my oldest daughter, they locked down for COVID,
Yeah.
and she went missing.
Yeah.
And when we found her, she told us that people had been giving her drugs.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think I told y'all before, that was a pivotal moment in my life.
Pricked you right in the heart. You're like, this is what I was doing.
I knew right then that I understood that God had allowed me to go through the things I would go through. I was seeing glimpses of it in every one of my children's life. Well, for the most part, my older children,
Yeah.
of how the things that I had learned along those years, along that journey, um, how I was going to use them
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
my family. And one of the biggest things that God showed me while I was incarcerated was his unconditional love
Yeah.
through his grace and his mercy. And that is what my girls obviously needed the most. And while I still kind of harbored anger because I was like, Jesus, my girls really needed me. I didn't feel like, out of everybody, I didn't feel like I should have had to go to prison.
Yeah.
I later learned that, he was really caring for me. I probably wouldn't be here
Yeah.
if not. But that was what changed my life, and made me want to not only never do anything wrong, no more drinking, no more
Yeah.
any type of drug, anything related to it, serve God,
Yeah.
because when we didn't know where she was, who else could I call on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The detectives weren't doing anything. Nobody cared. Rusty, I
Mhm.
think you were at a church when I went to Priscilla,
Yeah.
and I asked her initially, I said, my daughter is missing.
Yeah.
And it was there that God brought me to what I really knew
Yeah.
as rock bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and just to speak on, about what you said, his daughter it's amazing how, the Lord will put you through things in your life, like, let you be tested by fire. It's like one of my um,
Yeah.
favorite verses in First Peter. Um, it says that he'll let you be tested by fire so that you'll know faith that's, stronger than gold is what it says. Just to sum it up, as we say, the forgetful quoter I am. But
Mhm.
it's cool that what the Lord will bring you through because He knows that He needs to put you in somebody else's life because oftentimes at least in my young life I'll you'll have people tell you things are wrong and tell you things that and you're like it doesn't matter it's whatever like what do but like if you hear it from somebody who's made the same mistake and will say, hey, this is why this sucks, like this is why what you're doing is incorrect, then it kind of sinks in. And so that is the opportunity that you kind of have with your daughter. If you want to speak on that a little bit.
Well, it was a 360. I came out of prison that time and I said, God, I'm so thankful. I was
Yeah.
like marveling in the unconditional love that Jesus had for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I said, God, I'm going to tell the world
Yeah.
about you, right?
Yeah.
About your unconditional love. And he kind of spoke to me and said, start with your family.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that blew me because I was like, God, I could tell everybody in the world, but my family won't listen to me. And that is also in the Bible. I mean, it talks about, the prophet's not welcome, right?
Yeah, so
So,
Yeah.
Jesus went home and was trying to speak to people and doing all
Yes.
this awesome stuff, and they're just like, yeah, isn't this Joseph's son?
yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't he? No, that's not.
Yeah. The carpenter's son.
He's
Yeah.
not a
Come on
miracle
now.
worker.
Yeah.
I'll give you my first testimony is that when I told when she was where she was, I just never stopped texting her.
Yeah.
Because even though I didn't know where she was, she messed up one day and let me see that
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
read my text, and I told her that I had been where she's at,
Yeah.
that sometimes you just have to, your body's not going to want to do it, but you just got to get up, grab your stuff, don't tell anybody where you're going, and just move. And I told her that no matter what you've done,
Yeah.
I don't care.
Mm.
I'm gonna pick you up. No, nobody's mad at you. We love you and we care for you unconditionally,
Mm.
which means there's nothing that you can do that's ever gonna stop making me love you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she finally texted one day, and this I'm convinced was through the prayers of this little praying church
Yeah.
and at home. And I didn't know how to pray very well then. Um, but she finally came home and she enrolled in a rehabilitation program. And then we found out that we were having my granddaughter and she had a baby. And she's been doing well, and she's about to not only give me my second grandchild, but she's about to finish her first courses in college, her first year. And
Yeah. That's awesome.
so I'm so proud of her.
Killing it. So
Yeah.
you saw this grace and this mercy from God,
Yeah.
and after going to prison 3 times before you were 30 years old, and just all this mess stuff that people would think, oh, my life's over. You saw this grace and this mercy, and you decided, the Lord loves me. He's got me. I could do other things, and you stepped up and started living the life that you live in now.
Right.
And then you get hit with this bombshell of your daughter going
Right.
through this. And you did something awesome. You did the same thing the Lord did for you. You extended this grace and this mercy.
Yeah.
And it sounds like she's turned around too, and she's living her life. So that's just a testament of how God is.
Still
That this redemption thing that he has, this quality that he has. And one of Gaddis's favorite stories he's mentioned was the prodigal son.
Yes. Yeah.
He leaves home, he's asks for his inheritance, leaves home and squanders it all. And you think, anybody else wouldn't be able to just come back. Your dad or mom would be so angry at you and like, what have you done? Like, you're
Yeah.
dumb. Why'd you do that? But instead, the father meets him. He sees him out there and he runs to the son, hugs him, and throws a big party and celebrates his son coming home.
right.
Yeah. And not only that, not only was he celebrating it, was he welcomed. It says that the father, the one with all the money, saw his son coming from a long way off and ran out to the gates and put a ring on his finger and shoes on his feet and his best cloak, and they killed the best calf that they have.
Yeah.
I mean, literally the best for all.
They had an awesome barbecue.
Yes, literally the absolute best, and I think that's a part of that story that gets overlooked a lot, or at least it's. I looked over it a lot before somebody pointed it out to me, but because at the time, it was seen you were seen as unclean if you didn't have shoes on your feet, and so like as symbolism, which I'm sure obviously the Lord when he was telling people this, he knew that like kind of like the Lord watches us way, he put shoes on his feet and made him clean again, put him on the best robe that he had, put him on literally the best ring that he had, which was a symbol that, hey, this is a symbol of my Father's house, like I wear it now.
You're a part of the family again.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and man, it's
It's what he does though for everyone. That's the whole purpose of this podcast is we want to let people know this is what he does for anyone. Doesn't matter if you've been to prison 3 times. Doesn't matter if you've been in some crazy situations and all the messy junk that you've done. None of that matters. What matters is
You are the prodigal son. You are also the father of that son, if that makes sense. I mean, God is here with open arms, and then on the other end, you have to be that
You
person.
could give that grace
Yeah.
that you were
Yeah,
given.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have to give it back. Um, and it's so funny you were talking about you're tried, the trials and tribulations.
Mm.
Consider it pure joy when you face trials of any kind.
Yeah.
And that's in James. And the trials did not stop there. And at the beginning of the podcast, you were talking about
Hmm.
prayer.
Yeah.
And prayer is what changed it all. And it's so funny that years later, just recently, I had a lady who used to babysit me, and her name is Teresa. And she told me, she said, during all those years, she said, I always knew that you were going to make it, that you were going to be okay. She said, but I never stopped praying for you.
Yeah.
And I think about our kids now, or if you have kids, or if you don't have kids, but you think about all the kids and all the younger people who that we need to be praying for
Yeah.
during this time. And I don't know why I felt led to say that. Maybe somebody needed to hear that. But we have to pray for these children. My daughter still
Yeah.
probably does not realize the amount of prayers that went up for
Yeah.
her,
Yeah.
in the way that God has turned around. I've studied teaching about it, but
Yeah.
that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's really our only way, like our lifeline. It's literally a conversation. A lot of people, you know, obviously the Lord's Prayer teaches us like the a big outline. If you don't know where to start, the Lord's Prayer is a great, place to start.
Right.
Just fill in yourself, like, with that. But a lot of people get caught up with, oh, like my prayer doesn't sound intelligent or it doesn't sound like very spiritual, but literally
None of
it's
that
just,
matters.
yeah, it's just talking to the Father. Like you,
In your own way. And
yeah,
he knows.
Yeah.
He made you the way you are.
And
He
that could,
created you and designed you, so he wants to hear that. He wants to hear
right.
your voice, not someone else's. And
yeah.
you actually reminded me of an awesome sermon I watched from J.J. Vasquez at Journey Church. It's in Orlando.
Hmm.
He was telling a story. I don't want to mess this up, but it was something along the lines of like his grandmother and had always prayed for him his whole life, and they had prayed for him, I think to be a pastor or something, and he just never felt it or whatever it may be, and then he ended up getting a chance to speak at a big youth conference, and one of the prayers was he was going to speak to thousands of people, and that was the moment. It was like a full turn moment where he was like, wow, this is it. This is everything my grandmother's prayed for. But then he took his children to his grandmother. She was at that time in I think a nursing home or something. And he said, "Grandma, I need you to do one thing for me." And she goes, "Oh no, no, I can do nothing. I'm old. There's nothing I can do for you." And he goes, "Yes, there is. I need you to pray for my children." And so she laid her hands on his children and prayed for his children to grow up. And she prayed for one of them to be a pastor too. So and that I heard that and I just started bawling like a baby because it was just so amazing.
Yeah.
Just to hear that the power of a prayer. Her prayers
Yes.
were heard.
Right.
The grandson was walking in that, and now the great grandson could possibly walk into that. It's amazing, you know?
After we left,
Yeah,
well, I won't say if we left. After we we were at the church for a long time,
yeah.
and well, maybe not so long.
You live a little further away than
I
us.
did live a little bit further away.
Had like an hour journey to church,
Yeah.
and we go to church a lot at this church. So
Yeah.
we do now. We're doing Tuesdays. We're doing Friday night Bible studies, and we do Sundays. So it's a lot of
Right. Well, I was actually given a chance to do the praise dance that we did in prison. Probably some of the most holy churches. I don't want to say most holy churches I've been in, but you see a lot of people in desperate need. A
yeah,
lot of people that have cleaned themselves up and put on their best clothes to get there,
yeah,
but a lot of people who are broken were in prison, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So we were all searching, and we
For
had
something real.
yeah,
Yeah,
and we had these wonderful people that came in and taught us praise dance. And I know one place that came in was Souls Harbor, and they're out of Cherokee County
yeah,
in Georgia. And they have a ministry called Ye Visited Me Ministries, and so they would have a day of freedom where they came in. But I was able to share that with the church. But I want to say that the trials didn't stop there, and still talking about being under fire. especially with my children. I had one daughter that tried to take her life, and about the prayer and really not giving up, and
Yeah.
how God really takes you, puts you exactly where you need to be,
Yeah.
keeps his hand on you, and gives you these trials and tribulations because he's building you up for an army. And I heard this the other day, when you're building up for an army, you don't get permission
Yeah.
to be weak. You don't get to stand down while everybody else is training. If we're building for the army of God,
Yeah.
we need to stand up. We need to face these face these trials the way that God has intended us
Yeah.
to.
You can't build a foundation in a storm.
Right.
Yeah.
You build it first, and when the storm comes, you got a strong foundation. You can weather anything, and I do believe that stuff happens in your life. Like you are cleaned up. You're teaching praise dance, this awesome thing that is bringing people that don't normally come to church to see these events that you do, and they're just powerful. I mean, you got everybody crying. We had grown bikers, in biker jackets and stuff crying in church, and so you're doing stuff like that, and then you get hit with something, like what happened with your daughter, and you think, what in the world? I'm doing everything for you, God. Like I'm reading my Bible, I'm following you, and a lot of people could get discouraged by that. But if you're reading for yourself, that the
Right.
Lord is always with you no matter what. That He always has a plan better than anything you could ever think of. And when you go through those trials, you could stand with that firm foundation and know, I'm weathering this storm. I have the Lord by my side.
Yes, and we have a powerful testimony, like we said, of redemption. I
Yeah,
mean, we all have a story if we've turned to Christ,
yeah,
of redemption, and that's just what ours look like,
Yeah.
setting the example for those that
yeah.
that are coming behind us, or that are here around us, that redemption is for everybody.
Yes.
Everybody. No
Never
one's too
too
dirty.
far
Nope.
gone. He said, never too far gone.
There's not a person in that church that Jesus wouldn't try to save.
Right, he
Or
leaves the 99.
person in that prison, I should say, that he
Yeah.
wouldn't try to save. He would go after every single person in that maximum security prison.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
That's how big of a heart God has.
he does.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyone listening, that's the whole purpose of this message.
Mm.
You might think you've messed up or done something terrible, but I promise you, you're never gonna find anyone too dirty, too gone for God to just pull back and clean up and put new shoes on,
Yes.
give a ring to, take the biggest fat pig ever and make a barbecue, and you know what I mean?
Yep.
You're
Yeah.
never gonna be too far gone
Yes.
for that.
The Lord, through His Son Jesus, man, He wiped away literally everything. Like you are seen as pure in the Father's eyes through Jesus. Like, I mean, if unfortunately we live in a fallen world. There's sin all around us. We're sinful people. We're still gonna sin, but you know, if you ask for forgiveness from the Lord, and the Lord lives in your heart, man, there's nothing that you have done or will ever do that could separate you from the love of God.
Yeah.
There's nothing, absolutely nothing, and we all need redemption. There's not a single person living on this earth that.
No one, it says no one in the Bible says no one is without sin. So it's one of those things you think like, I don't even believe in the Lord. If you think that, you're thinking, oh, I'm good because I don't even believe in the Lord. There's this old saying I used to always hear when I was a kid. There's a fence, right? And on one side is heaven, the other side's hell. And I remember in the story, Jesus comes up to the boy on the fence and says, hey, why don't you come join us over here? You'll be so happy. I'll take care of you. I'll love you. I'll give you, you know, plenty of pleasures, and I'll just love you and nourish you your whole life. You have no problems, no pain. And he said, nah, I don't feel like it. I'm just going to sit right here on this fence. And then the devil comes up to him and said, hey, why don't you come over here? And, of course, he doesn't tell you all the misery and the pain and the suffering that you'll deal with when you're over there. But he'll say, you can have fun. You can just do whatever you want. There's no rules, right? Come over here. And he says, nah, I think I'll just hang out here on the fence. And the devil said, well, good, because I own the fence. And that's reality. The
Yeah.
reality is, if you don't choose the Lord, you're choosing the devil. Whether you believe in God or not,
That was
that's the truth is the only way to be redeemed, to be saved, and to go to heaven is through the Lord. And I wanted to speak on that. I know we don't normally take the time to do this, but I wanted to speak on that God is real. Ask yourself the question, where did I come from? How did I get here? How did anyone get here?
Yeah.
to touch on what you're saying, and that is if you listen to the story of my life carefully, and I think it's so true for all of us, but there is clear straddling of the fence that I did for many, many years where I knew Jesus was calling me deeper.
Yeah.
But I was saying, no,
And a
I
lot
don't
of us
want to
do.
get back here.
Yeah.
But once you don't, even if you decide, hey, I don't want to do that, but I don't also want to go forward with you,
Yeah.
Jesus, because that requires so much more.
Sacrifice.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
requires so much more sacrifice. Well, you see how it ended with
Yeah.
me, and we have to make that conscious decision of just laying it down.
You just have to look around and say, look at all this stuff in the world. Did you just magically appear? No, there was a designer, a creator, a builder
Yeah.
who put this here. One of the common arguments you always hear is like,
Creative
this,
design.
well, I can't see him. I can see the trees, I can see the stars and the moon and all these things,
Right.
right? They say that, but you can't see gravity. Don't go walking off a cliff. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
You're going to fall to your death because there's a rule that God created called gravity,
Yeah.
and it's going to work every time. You're going to fall.
It's a tale as old as time. In school, we studied philosophy, and it was called intelligent design.
Yeah.
And I think I said creative design before, but it's intelligent design.
Yeah.
And people have been arguing about it for, centuries. But the one thing that stands tried and true is that the people who know Jesus,
You can't deny
you
him.
can testify.
Yes, you can't
We
deny
can
it.
testify. If what we're telling listeners at home is just that if you will have that faith, it requires faith.
Yeah.
You have to have the faith. Then you will see God move on your behalf.
In big ways to where you're like, I can't not have faith. I've had some stories in my life that's happened. Ever since I finally got down on my knees in my kitchen over here, crying my eyes out, asking God, if you're real, I'm gonna give you everything for 3 months. Show me that you're real. And I gave him everything, and he showed me that he was real, and I can never, never deny him again. And it just, you want to talk about feeling the Lord? I can feel the Lord.
Miracle
There's,
working God.
it is different than you'd ever imagine, but you have to go deeper than just a church attender. You have to really give your heart to the Lord, and you have to realize that, there's a train coming down the line, and you're standing on the tracks, and there's only one way to get off the track. Once you realize that, and you realize the magnitude of reality, that there was a creator, that you were created, and that you have a choice to make. You either want to spend the rest of your life with someone who loves you, or you want to spend the rest of your life away from him. Because hell, people think God's so cruel. How can he create this place to torture people? What is hell? It's literally the absence of the Lord, right? So everything good is God.
Yeah.
God is good. Love is God. So love, kindness, hope, all this stuff is from
Love,
the
joy,
Lord.
peace, patience.
All
Yeah.
that is from the Lord. So it's not that he's there to torture you. It's just that he's not there. So everything miserable and just evil is in the other place, because that's the opposite of God. So you're just going to a place without him. So you have to decide if you love him, and do you really love him? Follow him, or if you don't, just
And is he tugging at your heart? Maybe somebody's listening and God is tugging at your heart. Make that decision. Drop everything and run. You've got
do that
to.
thing you said, repent. It's where you just say, God, I'm sorry. I've been doing this and this and this, and
Right.
I heard that you could forgive me for anything, and just say, God, can you forgive me for that? Can you take that away from me? Can you redeem me? Help me to be yours, and just give your life to the Lord. Say, I'm going to give my life to you from this day forward. And you're going to stumble. You might mess up, but that's the thing about the Lord. He loves you so much. He's never going to give up on you.
Nope.
But you should never give up on him.
Again, there's nothing that you can do, past, present, future, that if the Lord lives in your heart, that will ever pluck you away from his love.
You got to
Ever.
run the
There's
race.
nothing that you can do. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
As Paul says, run the race and win. Don't just get in the race
Yeah.
and just go along the journey. Run it like you're going to win. Just give it everything you got. Say, Lord, I'm doing whatever you ask me to do. Just be a yes man for the Lord.
And watch.
Watch what he does.
Watch what he
Watch what he does to your life. He could take you out of prison. He can redeem you. He could turn your whole life around. He could give you a ministry. He can rebuild you from the ground up.
To take you out of prison. There's something that I left out in there too, is that when I came home the last time, I was not supposed to come home then.
Really?
But it was my faith that got me out of there.
Really?
And I made a declaration in my room, and I could call people up now that were in the room with me
Yeah.
who thought I was crazy. I said, I'm going home. I'm going to be home by my next daughter's birthday.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going home on this day. I'm gonna be in the driveway waiting for her when she gets home. Do you know that I was home? I was home a year earlier than what I was supposed to
Wow.
be. But if you think about the story,
Yeah.
and you think about, I just told you that somebody was shot around me, had a firearm, and
Yeah.
was in a car where other people were trafficking. I wasn't supposed to come home.
Yeah.
I was never. I had
You've had multiple shots at that point, and
Yeah,
here you were
okay.
again.
Yeah.
I was as good as gone, but I remember praying, calling out to God before my court case, fight for me.
Yeah.
Fight for those who fight for me, God, or fight
Yeah.
against me. Um, and have mercy on me.
Yeah.
And I needed mercy because you know what? That judge was not going to have mercy on me.
Yeah.
We all
But
need
he
mercy.
did.
Yeah, we all need mercy. I mean, there's, like Rusty said, the absence of God is everything that is bad. I mean, if you think about it before, we uh, ask the Lord into our hearts,
Mhm.
that's just what we are. We're all sinful, black-hearted individuals. And, it's only by the grace of the Lord that
Right.
we've heard time and time again, just, I'm sure everybody has like stories of, like Tia said, just put your faith in him and watch. You don't, there's nothing that,
Try it out.
the Lord can't do,
See what he does.
There's literally nothing the Lord can do. Well, just to wrap it up, we want to thank Tia for coming on the podcast for the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the second time. Yep.
That's right.
Yep, and hopefully the producer, also known as me, can make his audio work a little better. But we appreciate everybody listening, and anybody got any closing thoughts?
No, just repent, turn your life around to the
Yeah.
Lord, give it to him, and see what he does.
Yeah, shoot ya. Well,
All right.
thank you for listening to another episode of 1024 Podcast. Remember, please like and subscribe on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes, and we're still working on Spotify.
Share it with your friends.
Yes, share with your friends. Every like and subscriber helps us. So we really appreciate y'all giving us your time today, and hope y'all be safe. We'll see y'all next week. See ya.
Yeah.